Well, good morning, brothers. It's truly an honor to be here with you, and I sense your presence here in this space all across the globe, joining our hearts and our spirits together. I only wish I could see you just now, but I will surrender to my imagination what I carry in my heart. I'm here in my home just outside San Antonio, Texas, and as I look outside my window, I see the sun shining with clouds rolling along as though they're headed somewhere. Blue sky, light green grasses that seem out of place at this time of year in Texas. Our trees are full leafed, insects galore. There's white-winged dove flying across my window and mockingbird and a spirited wind playfully animating everything. I'm truly feeling the deep peace that comes with keeping company with such. Where two or three are gathered in my name, and so it is. So breathe with me, brothers. In and out. Deep breaths. In and out. The animating breath of God that animates everything. You and me. Us and everything. Everything breathing. We are one. We are locating ourselves in this breath and locating everything else. From this place, we are grounded and centered and fully present. The animating breath of God going in and out of us all day, all night, bringing us alive with eternity held between each breath. It's the one thing we've been doing and will do our entire lives. The first thing we did when we came to this world was to gasp for that breath. And the last thing we'll do is give it back. And then we shall see God face to face. Breathe. Hafiz, the Persian poet from the 13th century, says, brothers, who can you tell in this world? Who can you tell in this world that when a dog runs up to you, wagging its ecstatic tail, brothers, who can you tell in this world that when a dog runs up to you, wagging its ecstatic tail, you lean down and whisper in its ear, beloved, I am so glad you are happy to see me. Beloved, I am so glad, so very glad you have come. Over my lifetime, I've been blessed with many wise and generous teachers, some human, many more who were not. What they have given to me, brothers, I freely offer to you. I want to welcome the great lover spirit and creator into this sacred space. And I welcome you, my brothers, to those of you who are listening to this conversation. I welcome everyone, even without their knowing, all the men and women and children all over the world. Those who would name me enemy are welcome here too. I welcome all our ancestors, the more than human world, and all those who are left out, all my relations. It was late spring in 2006 when I made my way over 816 miles of mostly West Texas empty highway toward my own men's rite of passage. I remember driving into the high desert of New Mexico with two friends who were in this together with me, and with each mile, the dawning of a little more awareness that something might go on in all of this that would change us forever. We stopped in Santa Fe for our last meal as ordinary men. We ate at the Shed restaurant, scarfing down blue corn enchiladas covered with red chile sauce, followed closely with long swallows of ice-cold margaritas. I think that was probably the moment when we started walking on water. Afterwards, we did our own version of a contemplative walk on the labyrinth at the Cathedral Basilica of St. Francis of Assisi, just one block from the old Santa Fe Plaza. And then we were off again, driving out into what seemed the middle of nowhere. And an hour later, we topped the last hill before turning onto that lonely, dusty road winding into Ghost Ranch, just across from Abiquiu Lake. I can see it clearly, that desert spreading out before me that would hold last rites over much of me during these next 5 days. My oblivion was about to occur, what Thomas Merton called the dying of the false self, the superficial, non-real part of me, in order to reveal my true self. Even as I left Ghost Ranch 5 days later, I was not really awake to what had happened to me, only that now I was an initiated man, and I was armed with a new mantra. When I was a boy, I thought like a boy. Now that I'm a man, I live as a man. If you have not taken this journey of the MROP, as we call it, I highly recommend it. If you have done the men's rite of passage, you know, like me, that initiation is only a beginning, not an ending. Now there's the tasks of initiation that must be attended to. And that's what we're about in these days together here, brothers. As initiated men, as mature men, we move into the world as generative men who integrate all the masculine archetypes to work for the common good of everything. The healthy warrior, the healthy lover, the healthy magician, and the healthy king. These archetypes integrated into the mature masculine in all of its creativity, beauty, compassion, and generativity. Robert Moore argues that the masculine path to healing includes this need to rediscover the archetypes of the mature masculine, to step into the healthy adult. It's only the immature masculine that parades itself as patriarchy. It's the immature masculine that dominates and oppresses others as racism and white supremacy. It's the immature masculine that dominates and oppresses the more than human world, leading to global climate change and ecological disaster. The solution to these ways of wounding everyone and everything is for the boy man to wake up to the mature masculine, to grow up into the adult masculine, as Richard has been talking about to us in these days, which will allow this man to engage the world around him from a larger and deeper consciousness that is not consumed with the self-absorption of the immature boy. The mature masculine is connected and grounded into everything and abides in you and in me. It is our true self. It is our true self, brothers. I wish I could hear you right now, men, because I imagine you're right in this with me saying, "Ho." I'd like to hear that right now. There's something written in our DNA that longs to grow up, to become mature, a healthy, generative adult. It is such a disgrace and malformation to see so many of these boy men walking around as political leaders, corporate chiefs, industry bosses, and even clergy, as though this is what men are and this is what men do. Brothers, do not follow a small man. Do not imitate him. Do not take advice from those who do not do life well. Do whatever it takes to find generative men to engage you, to spur you on. As iron sharpens iron, so is one man to another. I'm fortunate. I'm fortunate to know a 1,000-year-old man. People often call him Jim, but his real name is the Wild Man. It isn't because he is some kind of savage or rebellious man, but simply because he is untamed. Untamed by the cultures that are led by little boys walking around in men's bodies. These boy men abuse their power, take what doesn't belong to them, consume and waste more than they need. They dominate anyone and everyone. They are full of fear, full of hate, full of themselves, and they are killing the earth's inhabitants, starting with the most vulnerable. The wild man has no relationship with these boys. He is untamed by them. He is free in his heart so that he loves. It's so that he loves whatever is right in front of him. Nothing gets left out. He is free in his mind so that he can know what he doesn't know. He is free in his body so that he will dance in the morning dawn and with the setting of the sun, listening to the sweet song of creation, part of it, one with it. This man is wild and free. Brothers, do you know the man in you that is 1,000 years old, deeply mature and grounded and one with all things? I hope you do. There's a very real part of you that holds the DNA of God, and it is able to commune with the Imago Dei in everything. All wisdom traditions teach us that it is so. It is so, brothers. Even in you, even in me, even in everything, it is so. I remember being at Aravaipa Canyon in 2011 for affirming, something of a follow-up after the MROP. Richard Rohr was taking about 70 of us men into the tasks of our initiation, and I was sleeping in a tent the night before we would be sent out into the desert for a solo fast. I had one of those vivid dreams that feel too important to dismiss. In the dream, I was the observer. I seemed to wake up into the dream itself with this beautiful landscape of green grass in front of me, walking its way up to and over a hill that rose in the center of my vision. Setting on top of the hill was the largest evergreen that I had ever seen, sequoia-like, rising up majestic blue-green against a beautiful azure sky. It was huge and majestic. I was mesmerized by the beauty and tranquility. If there had been music, and there wasn't, it would have been compellingly peaceful. As I took it all in, I became aware of a silhouetted figure at the base and to the side of the tree. I couldn't quite make out what this silhouetted figure was at first, and then I realized that it was a man just standing there, stick-figured, diminutive, next to this tree. As I wondered what he was doing there, I suddenly became aware of this impending feeling. If there'd been music, and there wasn't, I would imagine something like the music in Jaws just before the shark was about to reveal itself. I felt anxious and a sense of foreboding. Then, in a blink of an eye, the tree folded over in a swatting motion and collapsed upon the man, then sprang right back up into its original posture as though nothing had happened. Everything returned to that tranquil peace of before. With the exception, there was no longer any man. He had been obliterated. I woke and sat straight up in my tent with one thought. Creation has just about had it with us. It doesn't fall lightly on me that the coronavirus is part of this world, brothers. It belongs here. It is part of this world. And while humans are suffering because of it, almost every other part of creation is thriving. We have oppressed and raped women. We have oppressed and raped our brothers and sisters of ethnic and racial differences. We have oppressed and raped the poor, the marginalized, those who are sick and elderly. And it's no great surprise that if we will oppress, rape, and kill all these other human beings, that we would bring all of this evil to creation itself. We are and have been oppressing, raping, and killing the more than human world. It's time to listen deeply to the weeping, to come into solidarity with the suffering, to bring transformation and healing in our wake into being. The ecocide must end. The whole earth and all of its beings are crying out for you and I to wake up and to stop what we are doing right now and to stop what we are becoming while we do it. The great wounding we are inflicting upon the earth has to stop, and stop now. We do not have time to waste. Like the water breaking for the mother about to give birth, the signs are here for all of us to see. If we will listen closely, brothers, from the heart, creation will speak to us. It was January 2018. I sat in a circle with 5 other men. I was sending us out to a wandering, much like you'll be doing this morning, to have a conversation with the more than human world. I suggested, as I was taught, that they ask and wait for permission to enter into the wild landscape, and after granted, to wander until they found a place inviting them to sit. After they had sat there in silence for a while, see if anything seems to catch your attention. Then speak to whatever is there by introducing yourself and speaking your intention to carefully listen from the heart and see what comes. Then after an hour, we were all to return to council. Well, I set out like the other brothers to do the same. And after finding the sacred place that called out to me, I sat down beside this extra large prickly pear cactus. Even alongside other Texas-sized cacti, this one could brag if it wanted to. So even though I felt a little sheepish and awkward, I introduced myself. Hi, I'm Jim. I live near here. I have a wife and 3 daughters whom I love with all my heart. I'm out here today to attend to my soul work with some brothers who are wandering around out here too. And then, feeling the weight of a one-sided conversation starting to loom, I said, you know, I've never spoken to a cactus before, so I'm not very good at this. I paused and sighed, and without hardly a second more than this passing, I was answered. What's a cactus? I could not have made up that response, brothers. And the more than human had my complete attention. I had just crossed a threshold and willingly accepted the consequences. The more than human world is ready and waiting for us to know it in its true self. And don't be surprised, like I was, if it knows itself by a different name than the one we've given it. That true self is imbibed with the DNA of the Creator, holding the Imago Dei as surely as you or I, and to remember when we and our ancestors held conversations with the more than human as deep speaking to deep. For our ancestors, it was not awkward and it was not avoided. I believe it is the conversation that will help all of us fall in love with creation and bring healing to everything. It becomes impossible, brothers, to kill what you love. Patrick Lane, the distinguished Canadian poet, tells a story of an encounter he had one winter morning in December of 1958. He was 19, living with his wife and baby boy in a 2-room apple picker shack in Okanagan, Canada. He had a job driving dump truck for a 2-bit outfit that was working on a stretch of highway that coincidentally would be just down the road from the University of British Columbia that would be built years later. And even more years later, that same university would confer upon Patrick Lane an honorary doctorate degree for his excellence and eminence in his chosen field. including his more than 27 published books of poetry. But on this cold winter morning in 1958, Patrick didn't know about any of that future that would be his. Instead, like us, he walked into the day that was in front of him. He says, I remember leaving the shack and walking out to stand by the highway in the wind and snow. I stood there shivering in my canvas coat as I waited to be picked up by the grader operator in his rusted pickup truck. The sky was hard and gray. Its only gift that winter day was ice disguised as a fragile, bitter snow. As I stood there in the false dawn, I looked up for a moment, and as I did, an iridescent blue butterfly, the size of my palm, fluttered down and rested on the sleeve of my coat just above my wrist. It was winter. It was cold. And I knew that the Okanagan Valley, where I had lived most of my young life, did not harbor huge, shiny blue butterflies, not even in summer. I remember stripping off my gloves and cupping the insect in my hands, lifting that exquisite creature to the warmth of my mouth in the hope that I could save it from the cold. I breathed upon the butterfly with the helplessness we all have when we are faced with an impossible and inevitable death. Be it quail or crow, gopher, hawk, child, or dog. I cupped that delicate butterfly in the hollow of my hands, and I ran back to the picker's shack in the hope that somehow the warmth from the morning fire in the wood stove might save it. But when I reached the door and opened my hands, the butterfly died. Many years later, Lane would speak about this encounter and say, I do not know what strange Santa Ana Squamish or Sirocco jet stream wind blew that sapphire butterfly from far off Mexico, the Congo, or the Philippines to this valley. I only know the butterfly found its last moments in my hands. I have never forgotten it. And I know the encounter changed me. There are mornings in our lives when beauty falls into our hands. And when that happens, we must do what we can to nurture and protect it. That we sometimes fail must never preclude our striving. That day, the beautiful creature died in Patrick Lane's hands. He says that I looked up into the dome of the hard, cold sky, and I swore to whatever great spirit resided up there in the dark clouds that I would live my life to the full, and above all, I would treasure beauty. I swore, too, that I would believe in honesty, faithfulness, love, and truth. Lane made these promises to himself at 19. And over 50 years later, he said, I carried these promises along through the tragedies and losses that all of our lives are filled with. But it did not change the promises I had made. He says, I continued to believe in spite of my weaknesses and fears that I wanted the world. Like us men speaking in council, Lane says, what I've told you is a story. It arose from my life, for where else but from a life can a story come? What I promise each of you is that there will come a day or night, a morning or an evening, when something as rare and fine as a blue sapphire butterfly will fall into your hands from a cold sky. A fearful child will climb into your bed and cleave to you. A woman or a man will weep, will laugh, will sleep with you in the sure belief that the one they abide with is governed by a good and honest love. Brothers, I encourage you to remember to believe in yourselves and to believe in each other. In a world as fearful as our present one, I ask that you not be afraid. Today is merely an hour. Remember in the time ahead of you to hold out your hands so that beauty may fall safely into them, and find a place, however briefly, to rest. In the words of Robin Wall Kimmerer in Braiding Sweetgrass, one of these stories sustains the living systems on which we depend. One of these stories opens the way to living in gratitude and amazement at the richness and generosity of the world. One of these stories asks us to bestow our own gifts in kind, to celebrate our kinship with the world we can choose. If all the world is a commodity, how poor we grow. When all the world is a gift in motion, how wealthy we become. May it be so, brothers. Thank you for listening, all my relations. Listen closely for a few recommendations. We will send you these in an email follow-up, so you don't have to try and write this down. Just listen. I'll speak quickly. Find a way, brothers, to get close to the edges, the margins of your life. Find a way to get close to the edges, the margins of your life. It's at that point where you exist meets where the more than human world exists, where what you know meets what you don't know. Proximity and relationship become real here. Listen and see with the heart. In this place, you will fall in love with the more than human world. It's as natural as when two people meet and find their hearts becoming one. You will care deeply about what is happening to our planet. Let me suggest 3 ways to get close to the edges. Spend time in nature. Every day, if possible. Slow down at a pace that you can be present. Sit, touch, see, and hear. Taste the air, the dew, the fruit of the earth. Breathe. Breathe, brothers. Bring all of you to all of creation. Creation will find you and welcome you and love you. I recently walked out into a friend's backyard and over to a familiar tree. As I went to strip off a leaf to allow my friend to feel the sandpaper texture on it, I suddenly stopped with the leaf suspended between my fingers. It had dawned upon me that I had no need to take that leaf from the tree. And more, what right did I have to steal it without any consideration? This was an unexpected and odd and surprising. And yet I stopped myself, and I'm guessing I stopped becoming something as a result. I was humbled in the moment. How had I not considered this relationship before? As I turned away, I said to myself, you know, Jim, this could be the beginning of something. This could be the beginning of something. Love is that way, you see. The relationship is not I, it anymore as with an object. It is I, thou. And I saw the sacred being in front of me, and I fell in love. This could be the beginning of something. Give yourself a chance to fall in love, brother. Spend time in nature. And second, get informed. You can't act on what you don't know. You cannot act on what you don't know. Get informed. Here's 2 books that I believe that you can read and move right into this adult conversation with everything that Richard and I spoke about last night. The Great Conversation, Nature and the Care of the Soul by Belden Lane. Belden is one of my mentors and a mentor to many of us men here in Illumin and beyond. If you don't know him, I hope you will. He is a lover of the more than human world and can help us find that same kind of love. Buy his book. It's in the marketplace. A second book is called Resisting Structural Evil, Love as Ecological Economic Vocation by Cynthia D. Molo-Beda. Resisting Structural Evil, Love as Ecological Economic Vocation. She is a PhD from Union Theological Seminary and teaches ethics at California Lutheran University. She concludes that neighbor love, reconstructs economic and ecological sustainability. Read her book. I'll have more resources listed in your email. Brothers, we have at least 3 breakout sessions that can inform you about connecting with nature and with the specific issues of ecocide, climate change, and ecological disaster. Steve Hicken, the title is called Climate Adaptation. Another breakout session, Glenn Siegel, Abducted by Lichen. And a third by Brian Stafford, Healing Our Connection to Self, Earth, and Community. Get informed. It's our work, men. We can't wait for someone else to do it for us. Pick up your fork, brothers. Now's the time to act. Act on your love. Act on what you've come to know. Begin where you are and move out from there. You and I no longer have the luxury to sit on the sidelines and wait for someone else to do something. Actions you can take right away. Consume less. Create less waste. Find ways to increase your use of renewable resources. Pay attention to what you spend your money on. Remember, you support the business ethics. You support the business ethics or lack thereof with all of your purchases. If a company is seeking to be conscientious, a conscientious partner in sustainability and justice with humanity and the earth, give them your business. Those that don't, well, you know what to do. Vote. Vote with these values in mind and heart. Here's a second thing to do. The first one is find a way to get closest to the edges and the margins of your life. The second suggestion is don't go back to sleep, brothers. Don't go back to business as usual. Pray. Pray with your heart. Pray with your feet. We must do all of this work through a power greater than ourselves. If we try to push the river in our own power, we will perpetuate the wound. Contemplation and action, as Richard said last night. Let's go to it, brothers. This is what healthy men do. We bring life in our footsteps. It moves out like a wake in front of us and behind us. Everything thrives there. I will be right there alongside you. Let us pray. We give overwhelming thanks for one another. God, dismiss us now with your blessing. May you bless us with discomfort at easy answers and half-truths. May you bless us with anger at injustice and oppression. May you bless us with tears to shed for those who suffer. And may you bless us with enough foolishness to believe that, yes, we can make a difference in this world. We pray in all the names of God. May it be so. May it be so. We are men transforming men. We work at this together, believing we can make a difference in this world. And we go to that work now. We will go into nature so that all our relations can know us and recognize us, and we can know and recognize all our relations. Brothers, Brad has sent the wondering that I've written out for you. I hope that you will print that out and take these instructions with you into your wondering. Even if it's in your backyard or a park close by, or even looking out your own window if you can't go outside for some reason, creation will lean in to attend. Move with intention and silence as you walk across the threshold into the natural world. William Blake said that silence is the only part of my day where Satan cannot find me. It's the shutting down and closing off of the strategic mind, the calculating mind, so that a fresh breeze can blow through us and remind us who we really are, who we truly are, and what we belong to. As you step across the threshold, drop out of that strategic, judging, critical, evaluating mind and fall into the innocent, imaginal, open mind that is ready for wonder, the unexpected, seeing everything as though it's for the first time, so that you can hear and see and smell and touch what you might miss otherwise. Attend to the smallest things, my teacher told me. This is designed as a two-part exercise. First, you'll wander with an invitation to encounter with creation. Second, you'll return and join in an online council with your brothers. We've sent you these instructions, so please follow them. Today, you're invited to let nature speak to you, show you what you need to see, to allow it to touch you in some meaningful way. The reason you're being asked to spend time outdoors is because we believe that the soul of the more than human world resonates with our souls in some mysterious way. Richard calls it the first scripture, the first revelation, the first incarnation. There is something that happens to us when we sit beneath a tree or walk beside a river or lie under the clouds. You don't have to understand it or even believe it, really. And you certainly can't make it happen. In many important ways, we've lost touch with what is most natural in us. And this exercise is one simple way to find it again, to situate ourselves in places that can bring healing to us because they haven't lost touch with their authenticity, their own brokenness, and their natural inclination to be generative. So I invite you to go out in nature. Take these prompts that I've written here and speak. Have this conversation with the more than human world. Breathe with it. It's breathing, you know. It is alive. Let the being in everything meet the being in you. The deep ontology becomes our ontology. We are all one. After an hour in nature, when you're ready to return for counsel with your brothers, offer all of creation in front of you a blessing with your whole heart. And in whatever way feels right, convey your intentions to bring healing to this world, brothers, and then go to your council circles. And so with that same intention, wherever you are, wherever you're sitting in this moment, all that's good in me, all the grace that's been given to me, I give to you. And I bless you, my brother.